All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. We do not have that much news going on to report to you folks today, but I'll be honest with you, I did want to make this episode just to say that I wanted to sort of give everyone a little bit of an excited preparation for what's coming in the next 24 to 48 hours. We will have the traditional, usual public episode that you all folks many of you that have come here initially many months ago and stayed for, and many of you who've also so graciously and humbly signed up for on the Patreon as well, that you all know and love, that will be returning very shortly. I just finished recording it. It will be available for members very shortly, 24 hours prior, 24 to 48 hours prior to it going public. But I do want to say that I miss doing the traditional episodes, and I'm very happy to be back at it. So without further ado, there is some news today to cover, but again, it's hard for me to cover this without getting political, so I'm going to do my absolute best. And I truly do believe that, again, I'm sure there's some news that I'm missing, but using process of elimination and not allowing our internal mental compass to be swayed too out of whack, I think that this is a fairly decent list of things to report on. So first and foremost, the Biden administration has, again, extracted, taken, drained, whatever you want to call it, another 40 million barrels of crude oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, again, I'm not trying to get political with the words there. We can argue, for example, look, I'll be honest, I like disclosed TV. However, sometimes I must say, I'm not a leftist nor a right-winger, but notice if we take a big step back, big picture, take a look at how the headline is framed. Biden administration drains another 40 million barrels of crude oil. See that word drains? That immediately gives a negative connotation to the emotional thought in which the way we interpret that headline. So again, I'm not trying to encourage or discourage a perspective politically. I'm just trying to say, look at big picture. Look at how this could influence those that don't notice just by the labeling of the title. I could be wrong, but again, well, speaking of that, again, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of getting respectfully tired of just this whole thing with oil and energy. They've had the free energy stuff for God knows how long, in my opinion. Now, I know it gets very political in bringing it out, and, it's kind of like playing poker, which country is going to show their hand first, and you don't want to be the first one to do it. I get it. But at the same time, I mean, enough is enough, in my opinion. People are with the free energy stuff. People are starving. We can help them, and I know maybe I'm getting a little too kumbaya or woo-woo, but I do think it is possible, particularly when the science leads one there to conclude or at least hypothesize that. So the next thing is that Hungary has declared a wartime state of emergency effective from Wednesday over the conflict in Ukraine, according to Prime Minister Orban. Orban says, quote, the government will declare a state of war from midnight today to protect Hungary and Hungarian families by all possible means, end quote, in a video posted on Facebook. This is again according to Blick, bilkk.hu / a bunch of other words and numbers and letters to the link. Look, I understand that the notion of wanting to keep the people safe, but under the guise of some type of fear-mongering, I'm not sure if I agree with that. Now, one could argue as well, to play devil's advocate, Dave, who are you to say that, that the Hungarian government is fear-mongering? I would say to that, fair. So this is the problem, guys. If I'm not on the ground myself, it's hard for me to say in cases like this, and I think that's how we should be thinking of things instead of immediately feeling inclined to jump to an emotional response. But again, I could be wrong. The next thing is that the YouTube CEO says that information can be weaponized, so they're going to keep YouTube going in Russia to deliver independent news into the country. I'm going to leave that there, truly. I have my own opinions on that. That's a double-sided coin. That's a double-edged sword, so to speak, right? That's a as above, so below, as they say. That's a gift and a curse in many different regards, and I think a lot of you know where I'll go in that way. So I'm just going to kind of leave it there because I don't want to get too political. That's not the purpose, in my humble opinion, of today's Kraken here. The next thing is that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is going to stay on the U.S. terrorist blacklist. Biden has decided, according to media reports, and in response to that, Israeli Prime Minister Bennett said, and I quote, I welcome the decision by the U.S. administration led by my friend President Joe Biden to leave the Iranian Revolutionary Guards in their proper place, the list of terrorist organizations. This is the correct decision, end quote. Now, human-on-human perspective, this only fosters more violence and advocates for more, again, tensions, if you will, but from a strategical perspective, as they say, quote-unquote, controlled chaos, which is not something I advocate for, but it seems to be the way in which this lineage of actions is taking. But again, I'm sure that it's like 7-8D chess. I'm not trying to make it as plain and simple as that, because who the heck am I to say, right? But with that being said, I mean, of course, I mean, here's the thing. If they are truly, like, let's play devil's advocate. If they're truly terrorists, that's one thing to be able to warn nations and what have you for the sake of the good faith manner of that system, the way the system is set up. But then there's also the human angle too that we have to consider. Again, I look at things as human on human, not, Israeli versus Palestinian, or, Iran versus, Israel, or Russia versus America, or anything, China versus Taiwan. Again, human on human. So I don't necessarily, it gets tough. This is a tough one, if I'm being honest. I'm going to have to follow up with you guys on that with respects to my personal opinion, because it's murky, and I'm not trying to defend Iran nor go against them, nor am I trying to defend the United States nor go against them either. Truly trying to take a neutral stance and perspective. The next thing is that North Korea has test-fired 3 ballistic missiles. South Korea plans to convene a National Security Council meeting in response, Yonhap reports. I wonder how much of this is to sort of drive up emotion with respects to global tensions. I mean, it's been said as by, journalists such as Ross Coulthart, former Australian 60 Minutes journalist, that his sources are telling him we're even in more higher tensions than during the Cold War. Now, forgive me. Now, to me, personally, that speaks to a much larger concept of, again, riling up tensions, and to what extent on the back end that is actually going to occur. And there's so many different facets at play here. It's very difficult for me to comment or speculate in that particular regard. But either way, countries are flexing their muscles, and it's poker at this point with respects to who's got triple aces metaphorically, who's kicking them kicking each other's legs under the table, who has secret deals, who are secretly shaking hands under that metaphorical poker table, things like this, right? At least that's how I view it. The next thing is that there was indeed, of course, a mass shooting in Texas. Now, again, tensions are ramping up pertaining to even the gun issue in America. I don't want to comment on my personal opinion, because I don't want to influence anyone in one direction or the other, particularly because I'm trying to, for the sake of positive, collective, beneficiary perspectives, view things neutrally, and then you folks as individuals, respectively, and irregardless of where you live, can take this news and apply it to your day-to-day life in a non-emotional manner. Again, it's not about removing emotion all the time. It's just about de-channeling or removing emotion, in my humble opinion, when this news is read, because we must consider that for better or worse, there's an emotional concept to this that the headlines seem to drive and derive us from and to. So the next thing is that Klaus Schwab said at the World Economic Forum with the Pfizer CEO that they were both targets of disinformation, anti-vaccine movements, and conspiracy people. I'm going to leave that there, because that goes into a whole rabbit hole of conflictual stuff. And again, to each their own with respects to that perspective. But I know for those that have been around on the channel for a while, you may know my perspectives on that. But again, things could change in that regard too, right? The next thing is that the Pakistan government has ordered the deployment of army troops in Islamabad's red zone as the convoy of the ousted Prime Minister Khan enters the capital. I really wanted to make this Kraken, not to make it super long, but just to show folks, look at it big picture. Tensions are ramping up everywhere, and people are getting caught up in those tensions, which speaks to, in my humble opinion, intention. And I'm not trying to get all woo-woo here, especially on the news segment of the show, but wherever even nuts and bolts, wherever you put your mind to, you focus on, it creates that. So again, just goes to show you that type of tension in that particular regard, regardless of what country. Regardless of which country, human on human, and I truly mean that. The next thing is that Chinese Communist Party, CCP's top brass, have reportedly discussed military plans for a Taiwan invasion, according to a leaked audio clip, according to ibtimes.com. There's also an English translation of the clip on YouTube, as at least as of the time I'm recording this, but who knows if it'll get taken down or not. But ultimately, folks, personally, you want my personal take? I tend to lean more and more to an anti-interventionist perspective, but again, I also understand that there's no final, dare I say, decision that can truly come up with a conclusive resolve that pleases all. There just simply isn't. That's just, the way of life. You can't, as they say, can't have your cake and eat it too. Now, to what extent should the West defend Taiwan or not? I don't know. Like, I mean, look, let me just crack a little joke. I would have said this if this was Trump too. Biden said about a year ago when he's like got off of the Air Force One and got off of the helicopter, getting to landing at the White House. He said, "I just got off, finished a meeting with President Xi." He goes, and we both agreed to abide by the Taiwan Agreement. There's no such thing as the Taiwan Agreement. That made me laugh. So again, this was about a year back that Biden said this, but you see the White House having to backtrack on Biden saying in the last handful of days that, again, they would defend Taiwan militarily without a doubt. I'm just paraphrasing. And the White House immediately backtracked and was like, no. He meant this, he meant that. So again, not saying liberal or Republican, not trying to go in that regard. I'm just saying, again, if I, at least for me, if I can't laugh, I'm going to cry. So it's, nice to have a little giggle during such times. But the point is to remove our emotion in this particular case from any potential insertion of tension and anxiety and escalation in our mind, in my humble view. The next thing is that Poland is going to acquire 500 M142 HIMARS rocket launchers, the Minister of National Defense has announced. Again, more of that tension ramp up, in my opinion. Speaking of which, Iraq's parliament has passed a bill that criminalizes the normalization of relations with Israel, and Muqtada al-Sadr, forgive me if I butcher that, calls for celebrations. Again, the ramping up of tensions. If the earth was a genie ball, and you had the genie tapping on different parts of that ball to dare I say, cause emotional tension. This is how I would do it if I was the genie, if I'm being honest. Taking politics out of it, looking at big picture. Truly for the advocacy of trying to stay calm and ensure that people don't, I don't want to say fall for, but because who am I to say? I understand people in their own respective countries can be very passionate about their culture and their country, and I respect that immensely. But again, it's interesting to see that broad perspective compared to, the macro versus the micro type thing. And the final thing is that infected people, according to dailymail.co.uk, without symptoms are 2/3 less likely to pass COVID on to others, a new study finds. Asymptomatic spread was used to justify harsh social curbs. Again, just so YouTube doesn't nick me, I'm saying this is from dailymail.co.uk. So it just, again, I'm not trying to get political or talk about, pro beep boop or anti beep boop, the beep boop, the thing that, because again, that also, if I were to sit here and say, I told you so, for example, not saying that I think that, but that only creates more of that emotional division and that duopolistic division, or that dualistic division. Again, I'm not trying to get all kumbaya by the fire type thing, but there needs to be a potential opportunity or window for there to be points of agreement. And I think ultimately, I'm of the humble opinion that this constant tension needs to be done for the masses, because a lot of people globally may in fact realize that we may have much more in common than we initially thought with respects to our own personal problems, whether financially, economically, you name it, irregardless of geographical location. So again, trying to put a positive perspective on this pertaining to the angle in which we may be able to see outside of all of it. So with that being said, I know this was not a super long Kraken, but I did want to get this in before the weekend approaches, and I wanted to thank you all so very kindly, again, for the constant support of the show, the channel, whether it's on the Patreon, whether it's on social media, whether it's on here. So again, we have lots of exciting content coming publicly and for the members, and we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.